Hi, my name's Stephen Levy with Levy Architects. We've got Patricio Rubio with our firm and Ryan Begley. I want to thank you all for coming out this morning. I want to thank the Barley Swine folks for having us. We're going to just keep it light. The Barley Swine folks have more food coming out, so just feel free to jump up and grab another bite or another cup of coffee. We're going to talk a little bit about Texas contemporary architecture today. And then we thought we'd do something fun and try our hand at sketching some Texas contemporary. And then just take a real quick spin of the dining space here at Barley Swine, a restaurant that we co-designed with Bryce, the owner of Barley Swine. So, why are we here? We're here to define Texas contemporary architecture. It's a style that we've branded as our own. It's a way that we brand our work. Potential clients would ask us all the time, how would you define your work? Is it modern? Is it this? Is it that? And we took a look back at our designs, our methodology, and we called it Texas contemporary architecture, a style that we feel is unique to Levy Architects. There's other styles, there's other classical styles, prehistoric, medieval, ancient Greek, Renaissance, Baroque, Beaux-Arts, and many others that we've all heard about, but we felt that there was a gap, that people really don't talk about new styles and how things have evolved other than modern architecture, which, you know, was 50, 70 years ago or so. So we feel our work is deeply rooted in Texas with contemporary elements, and so we called it Texas contemporary architecture. So what is Texas contemporary architecture? Well, it's the blending of two styles, Texas and contemporary. And contemporary architecture, in our mind, should not be mistaken with modern architecture. Two completely different architectural styles. Contemporary architecture is architecture of the present day, where we're at today. It's based on the desire to design things differently and with purpose. Form follows function. We've all probably heard that. It breaks away from outdated old processes, outdated old techniques, and is a new way of thinking. It's innovative, it's deliberate, it's clean, it's simple, and it's elegant. Then we take Texas architecture. And Texas architecture has two primary influences, Spanish and Mexican. And the Spanish and Mexican architecture started with the missions. And these are in Texas, and there's a slew of them. There's some that are a little more Baroque, but the earliest Texas architecture was the Spanish missions. And supporting the Spanish missions, you started to have agrarian type buildings, whether it be a barn or a log cabin. And inside some of these missions, you had beams, you had tile, some were stucco, some were stone, but they were generally, the architecture was generally the mission, and then the utilitarian form came with the agrarian buildings, the buildings that supported the missions, the living quarters and things like that. So that is Texas architecture in our opinion. So Texas contemporary merges the fundamental design principles of contemporary architecture and the historical elements of Texas architecture. At Levy, we believe our work demonstrates the blend of these two styles. And again, we believe it's a style that's unique to us. Our work strives to reflect sustainability, simplicity, craftsmanship, while paying homage to Texas architecture, where it's from, its vernacular. A design might be different in South Texas than it might be on the coastal bend, or North Texas, or East Texas, or West Texas. Oop. So how do we develop a Texas contemporary design? Again, it starts with the site, the context, the vernacular. So these are some office buildings in Central Texas that we believe define Texas contemporary, and they're all different. This project is for a traditional client, but it has contemporary elements to it. Clean stone, it's hard to see from this image. Large cut stone that's native to the area. Wood that's wood soffits and wood ceilings that are sourced from nearby. But then it's got cleaner elements like metal panel, which is contemporary, with some butt glazing glass, and then stucco. And then you take this, it's an office building in East Austin. It's what we call design on a dime. Very tight budget, but we were trying to do something different and unique. And there's a construction type called concrete tilt wall. And the client wanted to utilize concrete tilt wall for this office building with some mixture of brick. So we sourced reclaimed brick. We found some brick on a ranch in Dripping Springs that we believe came from a building at the University of Texas campus. So we found 35,000 of these bricks stacked. We shipped them to the site, and we incorporated them into the design and designed the vast majority of this building around these masonry units. This building is about 35,000 square feet. This one's about 4,500 square feet. And then this is a 120,000 square foot office building that sits adjacent to a 160,000 square foot office building. And it's completely different. It's off of Southwest Parkway. The existing building, the 160,000 square foot building, was there. And when we were engaged on the project, we were engaged to design this. Initially, they wanted to match the existing building. And we thought we'd show them something different, something that was Texas contemporary. It has limestone at the base, cantilevers for both shading and a covered promenade coming into the entry of the building that's in the center. It has views. It sits on 44 acres. That most of those 44 acres are undevelopable. So it's a pretty neat site. It has a series of walking trails. It has a pavilion that sits in the middle of these two buildings. But all throughout the building, we always try to bring the outdoors in. And we did that here a little bit. There's a balcony. So all around the outside of this building are little niche balconies. So somebody can go on the second floor, on the ground floor, on the third floor, open it up, and they can experience nature. They can experience these 44 acres that are pretty neat. So we talk about those agrarian forms that can be contemporary in nature. This is a pavilion that we worked on in Paladero Canyon near Amarillo. And all of the stone was sourced from the site. And This is another shot of that same pavilion. It sits down in the canyon. And as you're in the canyon in the morning and in the evening and throughout the day, the sun has these amazing colors on the landscape. Orange, red, a lot of rust. And so we took weathering steel. Some people call it core tin. It has core tin in the steel. And we took weathering steel as a cladding material up above the masonry. And we believe an important element in our work is scalability, having it relate to the human scale. Whether it's a 120,000 square foot office building, a 4,500 square foot bank building, or a 35,000 square foot office building, whatever it might be, or this building that we're sitting in, it needs to relate to the human scale. We can go downtown and we can see a lot of examples that do and don't relate. And I think we're generally drawn to those that have that human scale. So this project was a community center in Buda, and it has this modern glass box pavilion with this large shade structure, and then it's got this kind of lean-to, more historic Texas form with a fireplace out front, and again stone that was sourced nearby with wood for the glue lamps and the soffit that was sourced nearby. So we believe all three of these exhibit examples of Texas contemporary architecture. Some of you may have heard of Hop Dottie on Anderson Lane and Burnett Road. Our office is behind this restaurant. This was a stucco box before we were engaged on this project. And it was a soup and salad restaurant. And they moved out and they wanted to do something iconic, different, and something that would draw people to the retail space, but they didn't want to renovate the rest of it, just couldn't afford it. So trying to do something design on a dime. It was a pre-engineered metal building. For those that don't know what a pre-engineered metal building is, you know, if you go to a lot of farms or ranches, you see those metal buildings with the tapered metal columns. That's a pre-engineered metal building. And we took it and we cut it up, and it's hard to see, but we developed this structural system that was kind of fun and contemporary, and we exposed the base of it, which would normally be buried and encased in concrete. We brought those discussion plates out and exposed them and made them part of the architecture. Then generally, you'd have to have a handrail here. We didn't want a handrail. We felt it would detract from the architecture. So we pushed the planter out and we dropped them. We had two and we dropped them. And we planted this horsetail, which then acted as the buffer and allowed us by code not to have that handrail and do something contemporary. We did butt glazing and then stucco to blend it into the rest of the shopping center. A few years ago, a developer bought the building that we're in here. And this building was starkly different. It was orange. It was very flat along the front, and it had a little bit of a covered walkway. And we didn't know until we got under construction that it was actually 3 buildings put together over time. One of those fun things you figure out during construction. Well, this, and this, they're all different. They're all in different regions. So going back to the vernacular, This is on an up-and-coming corridor in Austin, and we wanted to do something different. We wanted to do something with some pop that would draw people to a rather small building that was previously not noticed. We wanted to do something timeless. We believe Texas contemporary architecture is timeless, and we wanted it to be clean. So we carved a niche out. About that time, we were lucky enough, Bryce engaged us to co-design this restaurant with Bryce. And so we knew we wanted some outdoor patio here. So we carved a niche in the center of the building for an entry to highlight barley swine and to have an outdoor seating area. And then we had these tile towers. And the tile goes back to Spanish architecture. And then we just had a really clean, simple metal bar trellis. And then the inside of the space is a combination of reclaimed wood, masonry, wood beams, wood bar tops, tile, and wood floors with a mixture of steel. So we believe this space, as different as it is from this space, and these other spaces, also defines Texas contemporary. So just a little bit on Texas contemporary. I don't know if you guys have any questions before we pull out some sketch paper and sketch.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you make something on unit scale?
Yeah. So we do it several ways. What we do is we try to do it with the fenestration, the doors and the windows. And we try to do it with breaking elements of the building up. So here what we did is we took a column base, which is about the height that I am, about 6 feet, and then above it we posted up with wood. And instead of having one big solid column, these are 4 columns. So we break that mass up. Try to break the mass down any way we can. We try to have long linear lines. Even though this roof is pitched, it's almost the Wrightian effect, Frank Lloyd Wright. Most of his work was long and linear, and it did a really good job of relating to the human scale. The coursing of the masonry. The size of the canopy and where that canopy is in relation to, the size of a human being. This space is actually much taller. If you look up, it's hard to see, but pulling some beams down so it doesn't feel cavernous. So we try to do it different ways like that, with different building elements, different building materials, building openings. There's a small opening here and then larger openings, and building masses. Yes?
I'm not sure exactly where the architecture stuff that the design took over in terms of interior design. Do you guys do all of that as well, or do you work with them to make sure that they capture that Texas contemporary feel with decor as well?
We have our own interiors at Levy Architects. We also have a creative department. So we believe the design has to be integrated. It has to be holistic. Just like landscape architecture has to start at the same time architecture does. It's every bit as important as the building, as the interiors. We want it to be a smooth transition when you go from outside to inside. Bringing the outdoors in, whether that's with small little balconies, or it's hard to see, but we continued this masonry element into the lobby so that as you walked in, it doesn't feel like, okay, I'm in a different space. It's a continuance of those materials. And our interiors and our architecture work together to try to do that. Yes?
So, talk about Texas architecture elements of that.
I'm sorry?
Talk about the materials and elements of architecture and contemporary modern previous buildings.
It's tough, but it goes back to that scale, right? And we don't want big masses of brick or concrete tilt wall, or even glass. And then when we do have a lot of glass, we break the glass up with lines, whether they're vertical, horizontal, or a combination thereof, so that that big glass wall kind of, you break that mass down. And we try to do that in every possible design element and every possible facade. It's hard to see here, and if you drive around this building, you know, we only had 35,000 bricks. Then we had to take a 20% breakage factor. So the entire building's not clad in brick. Well, as you go around the back, it's concrete tilt wall. And you can go to a lot of concrete tilt wall buildings and they're just solid concrete. And they'll have only the mandatory reveals and control joints for concrete breakage, crackage. Well, that's where we take that form follows function to the next level. Here, every 2 foot 6 inches, we had a horizontal line that breaks it down to that mass. So as you go around the back, those lines come all the way down. They tie in to the fenestration, to the windows. And it's hard to see here, but even the concrete flat work, it ties into the windows. It ties into the vertical joints of the windows. So where you have a concrete score joint, it then ties into the vertical element. And you may not notice it, but we believe it relates it back to that scale. It breaks that big sidewalk down. It breaks the big driveway down. It breaks the big concrete wall down. We try to do it in ways like that without it costing our client extra money for what they would already be paying for.
Almost the same question except for interiors. So obviously Texas gives you a palette for your interiors, but contemporary is a lot of stuff. How do you edit yourself to marry contemporary interior materials and colors and treatments with your Texas?
Every project's different. This bank, very traditional client, based out of El Campo. Most of their buildings are very, very traditional, and they wanted to break away and do something different. So we wanted to, a lot of their buildings are the typical old bank that we walk into. It's got the wood furniture, the dark wood walls. They didn't want that, but they wanted their execs to be able to relate to it and have a more contemporary feel. So here again, on both sides, we brought the stone in, and then we had stone flooring continue. We broke the column up here, which it was a steel column. We designed it, and we handed it off to our structural engineer that we work with to size it and make sure it works. And then we took that and we brought it inside, and we designed the deposit and the check writing station so that it had those same elements, that same column that held up this large piece of granite. That below it was walnut with horizontal lines that tied in to the horizontal lines of these 16 by 32 inch masonry units. So you may not know it when you're walking in, going by the stone, that you've got these horizontal lines every 16 inches, and then when you walk up to the check writing stand or the teller stand, you have those same steel reveals that tie back to the masonry. So we tried to do it there. Here in Barley Swine, completely different space. It has elements of contemporary. It has elements of, Texas, with the tile at the entry, the reclaimed wood. Just because we're using reclaimed wood doesn't mean it's not contemporary. or the clean wood bar tops, or some of the steel that you see. So, you know, an office space that we might go in might feel completely different. But we also try to relate it to that end user and try to tell their story as best we can. So I don't know if that answered your question. We do. We're selective with the residential. We do some ranch homes. We've got one under construction right now on Lake LBJ. It sits on 80 acres. We've got some other projects, residential projects that we've done. So.
I wonder if we could talk about the materials, because a lot of contemporary architecture is meant to look thin and light, almost like it's floating and invisible in a way. But yours is not. I mean, the materials are a mix of things. It feels breezy and light, but it's really solid and like really like strong. So I'm just curious what kind of like how you approach your like materials you're choosing to define your Texan contemporary.
So, kind of like the interiors, every project's different. You know, this one, what we did is we visited the site, and we knew we wanted a pavilion, and or we knew the client wanted a pavilion, and so we wanted it. There's an abundance of this stone throughout the site, and you didn't have to dig, you didn't have to quarry for it, you just pick it up. So. It just made sense, and the design started with the stone here. You know, this one, the client wanted to do something completely different than they'd ever done in the past. They usually did something on a smaller scale, much more traditional, and it was a community center for a residential neighborhood, and they wanted the community center to feel large, but they didn't want to pay for that space. And it's hard to see from this image. And they wanted it to draw people to the neighborhood. So this building is actually designed into a stone wall to make it look much more substantial than it really is. And the stone was sourced locally. Because it's in a residential neighborhood, we wanted it to have wood to relate to the residences. But then we wanted this glass box pavilion. That's where they have parties and things like that. This one, the building was designed around the brick. And when we interviewed for the project, the client, we were interviewing against a prestigious Austin firm and a prestigious San Antonio firm. And the client asked us, he said, can you design a cool building for us on a tight budget in reclaimed brick? We said no way, and we were just trying to be, you know, honest. So you can't do it. You know, anytime you use a reclaimed material, it's generally more expensive. It's harder to work with. You're going to have more breakage. It's not as refined, and we came back to the office, and just by chance, that day I received an email that somebody had these 35,000 bricks, and so I called the client. I said, "You're not going to believe it." And so we ended up getting the project, and we designed it around the brick. He knew he wanted to do tilt wall because it was East Austin, and he wanted to do something industrial / contemporary. And at the time, concrete made a lot of sense. In concrete, there's a recycled material called fly ash. And a lot of people don't like fly ash because they think it brings out bad qualities in the concrete. We designed this to a LEED standard, a green building standard. And it was designed to a silver. There's different levels. And so we had a higher than normal quantity of fly ash in it. And we didn't want to paint it. We wanted to expose it and let the concrete be what it was. So we did that there. This one, again, we were trying to relate it, the wood, in a contemporary way back to a traditional client. So the wood soffits start outside and they continue all the way into the inside. And these wood soffits are actually structural. It's a structural deck. that sits above that steel member. The scale of this centerpiece didn't make sense for it to be wood, but we wanted the members to not feel big, thick, and clunky. So these are all tapered steel members that are painted that if you look up, they feel good. You don't say, oh, that's steel, it's hard, it's cold, but you don't say, oh, it's steel trying to be wood. Here we wanted, this sits up on this perch up above 290 and Highway 71 at the interchange on the way to Dripping Springs. And so this is the primary facade facing that intersection. But the City of Austin has a design guideline called Subchapter E that they said you have an internal circulation route. This has to be your primary facade, even though this really was. So we had two design facades. And so we wanted this to be the front door. We wanted it to feel like the front door, and the city said this has to be the front door. But we wanted this to have prominence from that intersection as you drive by. And we wanted to be a beacon without being, hey, I'm loud and proud and I'm here. And so this is a metal cladding, but it's not a shiny, bright metal cladding. It's more of a gray, subdued metal cladding. So we try to do it in ways like that.
Is tilt wall just concrete?
Yes, yes.
It seems like you changed you started to use the word modern and then you changed it to contemporary. What is the distinction between those two in your practice?
I think in our mind, contemporary is using new materials in a new way. It's new ideas, but we're trying to pay homage to where we're at, the vernacular. So it's, in our mind, contemporary is timeless. I think some modern architecture is, and we all have our opinions about different architecture, but I think some modern architecture is not timeless.
I'm curious what influenced your decision to use sustainable materials when you can and be LEED certified when you can? And do you find that your clients are looking for that and they're appreciative of it, or do you have to kind of convince some clients that it's
No, nobody wants to pay for a green building. It costs a lot of money, and the paperwork involved adds a lot of cost on the professional side, architecture, engineering, and it adds a lot of cost on the construction side because of the tracking of it all. But building codes are requiring designers, engineers to design to a higher standard. So this building wasn't certified, but it's certifiable. This building was certified. So it just kind of depends, but we feel it's our responsibility as designers to best of our ability within the client's budget to design something that's sustainable. We like the material that's sourced locally. We believe, kind of like the human scale, it gives someone something to relate to. We don't always have that luxury, but when we can, we do. You want to try some sketching?